August 2005. It's been 60 years since the end of the Second World War in Asia. A group of Canadian teachers just came back from China, bringing unforgettable lessons. For 2 weeks, they visited survivors, historians, scholars, lawyers, museums, and historical sites related to the atrocities committed by the Japanese Imperial Army during the Second World War. Organized by Canada Alpha, the Peace and Reconciliation Study Tour for Canadian teachers was created in order to provide a cultural and historical background to the Asia-Pacific War. The study tour is to support teachers so that they would be better prepared to teach the subject in their history, law, and social studies classes. The study tour covered 4 main issues regarding the Japanese invasion and occupation of China: Japan's military sexual slavery system, the chemical and biological warfare, the Nanking Massacre, and the forced labor system. Our study tour started in Shanghai. To learn more about the Japanese military sexual slavery, the so-called comfort women system. Tens of thousands of young women, mostly from China and Korea, were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. Professor Su Zhiliang is director of the Center for Study of Chinese Comfort Women in Shanghai Normal University. He gave us a presentation on the comfort station system, its impact on victims, and the international redress movement.
大家可以看到这一张照片。Actually, the Japanese soldiers threw hand grenades to the station and demolished the station. They killed both himself and also the comfort women in there.
And here's a photo that shows a comfort station that was built by the Japanese engineering corps, very quickly, and this was one of the largest comfort stations here in Shanghai.
Archives and documents show that the sexual slavery system was organized by the highest levels of the Japanese Imperial Army. On the Pudong district in Shanghai, former comfort houses have been preserved. This is one of the houses seized by the Japanese military to use as a comfort station during wartime. Mr. Chang Lingrong used to live here before the war, so he witnessed the operation of this comfort house, and today he is sharing with us his vivid descriptions of those tragic times.
It's very surreal just to be here and actually see this firsthand now. It gives me a much better understanding of what's going on.
Among the few remaining survivors of comfort women, here is Madame Chan, who was abducted by the Japanese from Korea. She's reliving some painful memories, hoping that one day a sincere Japanese apology and redress will bring peace and justice to all.
阿公说他很想念，就是在朝鲜的人过来，有一批小姑娘住在那里，有日本人过来，然后就是欺负他们，这些所谓的欺负就是不知道。
In the Yiwu County, villages were devastated by the biological warfare during the Japanese occupation in World War II. At Chongshan village, we met survivors and witnesses of the germ warfare conducted by the Japanese Unit 731. We had the honor to meet and discuss with Madame Wang Sheng, a local icon and chief plaintiff representative of the Unit 731 lawsuit.
On top of this tablet, you can see a red slogan for 8 Chinese characters, which says, "No justice, no peace."
The lawsuit seeks redress and demands apology and compensation from the Japanese government.
You guys can't stay here anymore. You leave.
It was put up by the School of Fine Arts of the Zhejiang Normal Province. That is the group of university students that have been following us. And on the top line, the Chinese character reads, warmly welcoming the Canada Alpha's study tour. Okay, let's go inside.
Thousands of civilians from these villages were infected with bubonic plague, cholera, typhoid, anthrax, and other agents. Many were taken away as guinea pigs for biological warfare research and vivisection.
So one day he came here to pick up the dead body. He was asked to come here to pick up dead body. He said he found the blood on the clothes. So he opened the clothes, he found that it's empty. So all the organs were taken out.
I witnessed one case of rape. One day, Japanese soldiers suddenly came to the village. We found it out too late. I couldn't run away very far. I was probably just 500 meters from the village. I hid myself in the fields. I saw this old woman with bound feet. She couldn't walk fast, and she was with her young daughter. The Japanese soldiers grabbed the young daughter and raped her. I didn't see the rape. I only heard the young girl screaming. I saw the mother open her umbrella and cry out. Such brutality cannot be observed by heaven. It's too shameful.
WWII village is one of the so-called rotten legs villages, where the effects of biological warfare are still causing a lot of suffering and pain. Being there to meet survivors was one of the most emotional experiences of the study tour. After 60 years of suffering, their physical wounds may never heal, but justice will bring peace to their souls. That's why they came to tell their stories, answered our questions, and showed us their wounds. One of the worst chapters of modern history is known as the Nanking Massacre. This former Chinese capital was occupied and destroyed by the Japanese Imperial Army. People were randomly humiliated and executed in the most brutal manner. Women and young girls were raped and killed. The Japanese army wanted to terrorize the Chinese and weaken their determination to resist Japan's invasion. Today, many monuments commemorate the 300,000 victims of the Nanking Massacre.
This memorial was built on August 15, 1985. It is the 40 years anniversary of Japan's surrender to China. The dead bodies were collected from all over Nanjing.
This is the sign of the Japanese Imperial Army trying to shoot this ruin directly to trying to ruin the morale of the National Army. There are two Chinese characters carving on the top. Meaning is universal love, written by Sun Yat-sen himself.
One episode that exemplifies the savagery of the attacks happened in December 1937 at the Swallow Rock Cliff on the bank of the Yangtze River. Over 50,000 Chinese people were killed in cold blood. Most were pushed over the cliff into the river so that the Yangtze River would take the bodies and the Japanese wouldn't have to bury them. For educational purposes, and as a tribute to the victims, the Nanking Massacre Museum preserves and presents a great amount of evidences of the massacre, including photos, films, documents, stories, books, and even the body remains of victims from excavated mass burial pit found at the site.
And those plates with yellow letterings, it represent kids. And those with blue letterings, like that 176 there, they represent middle-aged folks.
Madame Ni Kui Ping is honored in the museum with a statue. She's one of the survivors who gave us their testimony. She endured the horrors of war and witnessed the atrocities committed by the Japanese Imperial Army. Mr. Shang Jijian came to tell us his story. He hopes that with so many evidences, this tragic chapter of history won't be denied by Japan anymore.
When I hear these survivors talk, they really are braver and more courageous than even I thought they were. The one question was asked one day of a person who saw his brother and sister bayoneted to death, killed, and he said if a Japanese soldier comes in here today and if he said, "I'm sorry for what I did," I would forgive him. And that to me surprised me, and it says a lot about the Chinese people. Very, very, very impressed by what I see. And
meeting survivors and visiting historical sites and memorials, we learned that we have to do everything we can to make sure that atrocities like that would never happen again. During the 14 years of invasion, over 10 million Chinese people were enslaved by the Japanese Imperial Army and Japanese corporations. Over 40,000 of them were taken to Japan and forced to work as slaves in mines and construction sites. We came to a village in rural Beijing to hear the testimonies of forced labor survivors such as Mr. Liu Qian.
They fed us with cakes made of broad bean and also the black kind of rice.
He brought us his vivid description of the subhuman treatment they endured during wartime.
Okay, he said because he couldn't move, right? So he was only relying on his co-workers to feed him. But then because he really couldn't move, and then a lot of rats actually run over on his body and bite him. So he was so painful because in the daytime, all people are outside, so no one could help him. You know, he could just let all these rats run over and bite him, you know, all the time. So it was so painful for him. Those are students who came forward and apologized to him and said, "You don't need to apologize for me because it's not you who did those, but it's those people, the war criminals that did this. I come here to ask for apology from the war criminals, not from Japanese people." So he said for him, he doesn't hate ordinary Japanese people.
On these dome-shaped things are incidents recorded by individual localities about the atrocities or tragedies that happened during the war.
In Beijing, we visited the Museum of War of Resistance Against Japanese Invasion. There, we met with Professor Rong Wei-mu and Professor Bu Ping to learn more about the whitewashed history textbooks published in Japan. To counter such revisions of history, the two professors joined a group of scholars from China, Japan and Korea to write a new history textbook about the Asia-Pacific War for students of the three countries.
Why do we have to talk about the understanding of history? Although it's already 60 years after the war, there are still a lot of differences in understanding of this chapter of history among Asian countries, especially in East Asia. So historians from Japan, China and Korea have been working together for 3 years in a joint effort to write a history book for students to resolve this situation. Finally, we have published this history book for students. It's called Modern History of China, Japan, and Korea.
Although the book is not a very thick one, and yet there are 3 parts to this book, and each part, the Chinese part, the Japanese part, and also the Korean part, will detail what the country experienced in the war as the country from their own perspective. In this book, the sections on China and also Korea describe the sufferings of the people. For example, in the Chinese, the Nanking Massacre.
I think one of the greatest things for me was coming to a country with so much history. And having learned the history before, and actually seeing everything is a very big impact. Also, I really enjoyed meeting the survivors. And I really enjoyed hearing their stories. Not enjoyed, but it was very powerful for me to meet them and just to get a sense of what their life was like. It's like history here. Like I can live history, which is really important to me.
It's a fascinating experience because it's something that you don't get to do very often, and especially when you're teaching history. You read about it, you study it, but you don't see it or hear it firsthand. I think the most moving thing was hearing the testimonies from the survivors themselves and not just hearing their voices, but seeing their faces and understanding that there's a specific face that goes along with the stories, and it makes it more human. And especially when we're going back to teach our own students, we can bring the pictures and say, I met this man. This man exists, and he's representative of something bigger.
So he said he went to Japan for 2 years already, and then the Japanese lawyers has been helping him. But so far, there's no redress yet.
Attorney Kang Jun has been working extensively to support victims in their redress lawsuits against the Japanese government and corporations.
The written judgment issued by the Niigata District Court on March 26, 2003 was excellent. The judge acknowledged in great detail the historical facts because the evidence represented was very comprehensive. We even included documentation from a Japanese Secret Service agency that reported on the kind of food given to the forced laborers during the period they were enslaved by the Japanese corporations. They were not provided with sufficient nor decent food, but were given only meager rations of stale and moldy bread. They wanted to make sure that the forced laborers became so starved and weak that they had no strength left to escape, but yet remained alive enough to labor for the corporations. That was the situation the forced laborers were in.
The study tour showed us that a sincere apology from the Japanese government would bring about reconciliation between Japan and the people of the victimized countries. This is critical for a long-lasting peace in the Asia-Pacific region. The stories we heard, the images we saw, and the people we met will stay with us forever. The experience has strengthened our commitment to work for peace and justice, and to teach our students about justice, compassion, and reconciliation.